we've got nerfs and some buffs and a lot of changes for Duels. That's right, it's patch day and the 24.2.2 patch notes just got released, and there are some major card changes in this one. We're going to run through comments here and a little teaser for who's getting nerfed, among others. Standard card updates. Dev comment, our top priority this patch was to make the meta feel more stable and more diverse. For that reason, we focused primarily on making a moderate number of high confidence changes this patch. We expect there will still be room for adjustment after this settles in, but we'd like to take the opportunity to see where these changes land before making further changes. And what that means is, I think some pretty substantial nerfs in this one. First and foremost, Wildheart Guff is finally getting changed. Guff will now grant empty mana crystals instead of full mana crystals for both his base effect and his hero power. So in the past, his hero power effectively cost 1 mana because you'd get one of those mana back immediately because he would be gaining a full mana crystal. This actually makes his hero power cost a full 2 mana when ramping with it. Of course, card draw aspect hasn't changed, but also Guff himself now does not refill any mana. So sometimes, if you'd play this on 6 mana, for instance, you'd have Guff. He would give you 1 full mana, you'd have enough to hero power and then ramp again. Basically, those sorts of turns are pushed back by a mana. It doesn't make some of those things as easy to weave in. And I also think this actually has pretty substantial impact on how quickly you ramp with Guff as well. There are so many turns and scenarios where you're lining up the exact right mana, and that 1 extra mana off the hero power makes all the difference for like squeezing in a 10 drop, squeezing in an 8 mana card. That's not going to be possible with Guff. So I think this is actually a more substantial change than some people might expect. I think this hurts the card quite a bit. Probably still going to be good. It's still just a lot of card draw for Druid, and that can be powerful in its own right. Still allows you to get to 20 mana. That can definitely be helpful, but it's going to be a little bit more clunky to play Guff and start getting to those higher mana totals. Everything will be delayed just a little bit more. They'll be more exposed to counter pressure from time to time. That will absolutely affect the win rate here for Guff. Next up here, Edwin is getting his previous change reverted. He's going back to a 4 mana 4/4. Turns out the 3 mana 3/3 made him feel pretty darn powerful, and I think he was a fine card as a 4 mana 4/4. Blizzard seems to agree. Going back, we kind of know and expect how this will work for Edwin. I think he'll still be solid, just not really, really good, and won't have such crazy early game pop-offs potentially. Next up is a change to the Dawn Grasp hero card's hero power specifically. Kind of a shame they didn't put the hero card image up here, but now it will only scale by 1 damage when honorably killing. So instead of going from 2 to 4 to 6, now it'll go from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, and that's an enormous change. Dawn Grasp hero card felt really powerful because what would happen is you'd almost always end up in those late game situations where it's dealing 6 or 8 damage for 2 mana, and it's just almost impossible to keep up with that efficient of damage output that doesn't even demand any resources. It's just right there on the hero power. This will really lower the damage output of this substantially, essentially cutting the scaling in half. 3 and 4 is a lot more manageable for a while than getting up to 6 after just a few pings. This does mean it might occasionally be a little easier to line up the honorable kills, which could be a slight benefit in some ways, but since it takes twice as long to net the benefits, I think that's still a substantial nerf here and a huge change to Dawn Grasp's damage output, which is important because there are 2 really solid mage decks right now in the meta. Mage is also getting a change here to Nightcloak Sanctum. This is one pretty much everybody was recommending, taking the location down to 2 durability instead of 3 durability. So it's still going to have that early to mid game impact of slowing down opponents. That's fine. The card should be reasonable, but now it just doesn't seem like it goes forever. You're finally going to be able to turn the corner against Mage and get some minions to attack through where they can't just ride the Sanctum, from basically turn 3 to turn 7, still freezing your stuff all along the way. Also, of course, reduces the total number of skeletons in the pool for things like skeleton mages and Kel'Thuzad, which might make a little difference as well. Ultimately, I think this is a good change. A lot of the freeze effects just felt so oppressive, like you couldn't escape them. They just kept coming, and this certainly helps ease that frustration a little bit, I think. But still, I think will be a good card. By the way, I think both of these will still be playable, just taking the edge off a little bit. Next up is a change to the Hunter quest line. Now, the initial portion of the quest line will demand 3 spells instead of 2 spells. So pulling down the power level there a little bit, just slowing them down, getting that first reward delayed. I don't think this first reward makes a huge difference in my experience. They're not usually hero powering your minions early in the game. They're usually playing spells while they still have a smaller mana pool to work with. Often they're able to squeeze in all the spells they want and don't really want to spend mana hero powering after this first step. So I don't think the initial reward delay here is all that significant. It's really more about the total number of spells across the entire quest going up by 1, which could occasionally, of course, push that final quest reward back a turn, push that Tavish a turn later, which gives you more time to get under them, more time to establish counter pressure. It doesn't always sound like a huge change here for 1 spell, but those sorts of things can incrementally add up to a substantial nerf over time. And I think the win rate will drop a percentage point or 2 to accommodate this change, which is nice. A lot of people feel frustrated by Quest Hunter. I don't actually ever hardly see any Quest Hunters for some reason, but I know this has been a huge pain point. Next up, Kael'thas here is going to 8 mana from 6. This is a major nerf, and I think importantly, a break point here at 8 mana that means traditionally you will not be able to play this as easily with a Bran Bronzebeard. 7 mana still would have allowed you to play it with Bran, and therefore get a Denathrius out. At 8 mana, you're going to need some additional help, coins or mana cheat or whatever, to make that happen. And even the dev comments here reference this. Kael'thas, Bran, Denathrius have appeared together as a package in a variety of decks. To address the specific interaction between these cards, we felt the best solution was to add 2 more costs to Bran Kael'thas combo so they couldn't be played with 10 mana. And yeah, I think that's reasonable. I think Denathrius has been a pain point for a lot of people and kind of the most visible sort of the problem. So I think some people will be frustrated that Denathrius is not getting nerfed. If I keep scrolling, no Denathrius nerfs. I think people will be frustrated by that. But ultimately, I think this still targets one of the most frustrating elements, is that double damage output can feel very hard to win against sometimes. It just feels hopeless. I think if you have a more traditional scaling Denathrius, if druids don't have, such crazy mana to play with, might make Denathrius a little harder to pull off. All of these things add up, and, small changes here and there make a big difference in the meta over the course of a lot of games. And of course, this is a pretty substantial change. I think, unfortunately, this really does kill Kael'thas in most other environments. I don't know, Druid can still do this. They can still get to, 11 mana and still do Bran Kael'thas stuff. But most decks, it's going to be hard to use Kael'thas at 8 mana. The mana cheat here probably just won't feel worth it for most decks. The kind of cheesy stuff we were doing in Tiny Fins, I think that goes away. So Kael'thas might fall out pretty hard here from this change, but that might be a good thing at this stage. Another interesting nerf here, the Smothering Starfish going from 3 to 4 mana. This was a tech card we saw popping up quite a bit in the meta to answer a variety of different things. And sometimes just being used, of course, to counter freeze effects as well can be nice. And Smothering Starfish was living up to its name a bit too much, smothering the meta, apparently. The goal for this card was for it to be a strong tech card, but the cost included in your deck was low enough that it was acting more like a staple than a tech card, while responding to specific metaphors to Starfish was also unintentionally snuffing out a variety of underrepresented decks. Things like, Paladin, for instance. You can't get buffs and Divine Shields to work if Starfish is in every deck, so it opens up a lot of space for other decks to work, which is nice. Also, a couple other buffs here. We got the School Teacher going to 4 health. Remember, this used to be a 5/4, then they pushed it down to a 4/3, but now they're bringing it back to a 4/4, and I think that's a really big change. 4 health dodges a lot of removal in trades that 3 health doesn't, so I think this will help School Teacher find an extra home or 2. Also, the Alliance Bannerman is going back to 2 health. This one got nerfed a while ago to 1 health when Paladin was everywhere and in tons of decks, but this seems like just a free, easy revert on this card that might give Paladin a little bit more edge. Hopefully, between other things getting nerfed and Paladin getting a tiny change here, maybe Paladin will feel a little bit more viable in this new meta. So on top of the standard changes, as you can see here, there are a lot of other Battlegrounds updates and balances, and I'm not going to go through all these in detail. I don't frankly have the insights to even cover them all right now. I have not played enough Battlegrounds to tell you what all of these mean, but I'm going to scroll through these so you can take a gander as I scroll, and I'll put a link down in the description to all of this as well. This will be in the description if you want to go read all the Battlegrounds changes yourself. Feel free. So for Duels updates here, unfortunately, these do not have images associated with them, which is a little bit tough. I thought they might, but we could probably fill in the gaps here. So I will do my best to pull up images as we're going here. So No Guts, No Glory. If you don't know that one, that is the warrior hero power for Rattle Gore. It's going to 2 mana. War Commands is the hero power for Drekthar that draws a neutral. This one was very powerful, really good, going to 3 mana. That's going to help a lot on that one. Dino Tracking, I'm sure you know, is Brand's hero power that discovers cards. That's going to get a change. Before, it would just passively work at the start of your turn. Now it's going to be an active 2 mana hero power that allows you to discover a card from your deck. So targeted draw, but it's not free, which is a big change. Frost Shards is Mage's hero power that gives them an Ice Shard. That's going to 2 mana. I think that's going to help a lot. That thing felt really, really efficient. Oh, these have artwork. Thank God. Okay. So also some signature treasure changes here. Gift of the Heart is now going to be a 6 mana card and only give 3 mana crystals. So that is a huge nerf, both in cost and in effect. And I think that's going to hurt quite a bit to this. You know, I don't think this card was like crazy insane, but you know, you could do cool stuff with Druid in general. So, you know, maybe this is more of a nerf to kind of the entire package of becoming a Druid as an allied card, and less about, because, you know, Drekthar Druid is really good, less maybe about this card itself and more about targeting Druid stuff. Track Tamer Alessa is going to 3 mana, which is nice. This card feels like it could really run away with games sometimes. Just push a ton of bodies and damage simultaneously with cheap spells. So I think pushing that back a mana is going to help a lot. Magister Unchained going to 3 mana from 2 mana. I don't see this one a ton, but it definitely is a high output card. It can help you find a lot of stuff. So increasing the upfront cost of this one could definitely limit the total number of things drawn off of it, which is nice. Senior Excavator is going to draw 2 cards now instead of 3, and the cost reduction is going down to 2 from 4. So this is a huge change. One less thing, and, you know, half as efficient at discounting cards. So this hurts Senior Excavator a lot. Before, this would often feel like a blowout. Draw a couple insane minions, play them. It's just giant resources, giant tempo. That felt too good. And now, you know, the tempo here from cost 2 less is going to be much harder to realize. You probably won't really be able to cheat out a lot of stuff, and you're actually even less likely to hit good minions because you're only drawing 2 cards instead of 3. So all in all, an enormous change here to Excavator. Bran is getting hurt bad with both hero power changes and Excavator here. Shadowword Void also going to 5 mana. Remember, this actually used to be 3 mana. Now it's pushed up to 5, delaying some of those early blowouts. Or if you manage to get something big on board, the priest is like, ha, thanks, and they just kill you. I think that's a good change. Elemental Chaos here going to 8 mana. This is a crazy one. Now, that card did do a lot for 6 mana, to be fair, because you're getting 4 pretty crazy effects. So 8 mana, to me, feels a little bit better. This is another one of those where, even though this card, you know, in a vacuum seems really good, this is probably more of a nerf to the entire sort of shaman package than it is, you know, specifically one card or not. Green Tortolan Shell is going to 2 mana. Ultimately, I still think that's going to be a really efficient play at 2 mana. This thing can just be an enormous amount of tempo swing, just absolutely, because, you know, this scales up. It's removing multiple minions all at once. I've gotten blown out by this card a few times now. Making it a little more mana, I guess, will occasionally help, but I think this still remains pretty darn good. Safe Harbor, though, this is crazy. A 3 mana nerf. I told you guys this is the best card in Hearthstone, and it's confirmed right here. 3 mana nerf is absolutely bonkers, but it's still, honestly, at 5 mana in the right scenarios, it's still going to be a good card because it is just straight up removal. It's like a mind control, basically, that's even better in a lot of ways because you can get battle cries and stuff. So 5 mana, honestly, is still pretty fair for a card like this. 2 mana was just absolutely bonkers. So interesting. I mean, it's definitely going to hurt, but I actually think you'll still be happy to play this in many cases. Scales of Justice is going to 8 mana for Sir Finley. This is another one that's been nerfed a couple times. It's fair. It's a very powerful card. You know, it's straight up board denial in many cases with transforms, killing gray bowels and things, and then a lot of resources that are efficient on top of that. So pushing that back a bit, making it harder to counter tempo with the Murlocs you get, I think makes sense. Warden's Insight here for Omu going to 4 mana. That's totally reasonable. This was a very powerful card. Sometimes the mana refresh was awesome, and sometimes just the bodies on boards worked really well too. Mycelium getting another change. This one's pretty cool. It's no longer going to be infinite because they're changing the way it works. Before, you would discover the choose one card and then shuffle Mycelium into your deck. Now you're going to discover a choose one card and shuffle it into your deck. So number one, you don't get that resource immediately. You're going to just get a higher quality card in your deck. It still has the effects combined. But then you're going to repeat that 3 times. You're basically shuffling 4 good cards into your deck, but you're not shuffling Myceliums into your deck. So will this be worth it? I don't know. It's a really big change. You know, it's nice putting good cards in your deck, but it's going to be a long-term upside, not an immediate upside. Definitely makes Mycelium worse, which I'm cool with, but enormous change. It might kill the card. I think it's possible. There were also some changes to passive treasures, which again, I guess don't have images in this case. Also, hold up here. I'm trying to pull these up for you guys. Man, these aren't even on the Duels site. But anyway, these say the full text, so we'll understand what they are. Arctic Armor, you were in the past gaining 1 armor whenever you freeze an enemy. Now it's after the first time you freeze an enemy each turn, gain 1 armor. So my interpretation of this, it's actually a little bit awkward. After the first time you freeze an enemy each turn, gain 1 armor. I don't know if that means that each enemy is only counted 1 time, or you only ever get 1 armor total per turn. So in other words, if there's like an 8/8 on board and you freeze it 3 times, you might only get 1 armor from that 8/8, but if there's another minion next to it, you might still get another armor. I'm not actually sure if it's capped at 1 per turn or if it's capped at 1 per enemy per turn. You know what you guys think? I don't know. Forgotten Depths got a change here. This doesn't surprise me. I almost never see this, but we did have a crazy run with it, so it kind of makes sense. Instead of putting 3 Colossals that cost 3 less on the bottom of your deck, now you just put 2 Colossals on the bottom of your decks. That is a big change. I don't think that's going to be any good anymore. Wither the Weak is going from 2 damage to 1 damage, which is big. Sometimes that 2 damage was really hard to get through if you tried to get early minions out. 1 damage is definitely going to limit total damage output to face and help you keep minions alive. Potion of Sparking is getting a change here. This is now going to deal to a random adjacent minion instead of both adjacent minions. So both going to make it a little bit harder to line up clean hits sometimes, perhaps because of the unpredictability, but also just lowering the total damage output. Freeze Solid, thank God, is getting changed. Whenever damage is dealt to a frozen enemy, deal 1 more, not double it. I mean, look how substantial that nerf is. That's crazy. So, you know, if you were dealing 8 in the past, it would go to 16. Now it's just going to go to 9. That's fantastic. It still adds up to a lot of extra damage, but it's much, much worse. I don't know if that'll be any good. Glacial Downpour also getting an enormous change. Now they're only going to get a 2/1 shard instead of a 3/6 elemental. So it's still a lot of free stuff, but it's way easier to deal with. Enormous change. That makes that a lot worse as well. Special Delivery getting a change. And now it's not every rush minion. It's only the first rush minion in a turn. So they can't say like get a crazy play off of a single bumper car just cycling 1/1s forever. Now it's just once per turn, which I think will still keep this pretty good. Sometimes you just needed that 1 per turn to get like a cool run back double off or whatever, some cool Rokara doubling, but absolutely changes a lot of game states and helps a lot where they don't just snowball like crazy. Cookie's Ladle moving to tier 2. That was a pretty insane card draw engine for Murlocs. Oops, All Spells is gone. I'm glad I just got to run with it. And Party Replacement is gone. Removed from all pools. And then finally, some bug fixes and changes as well. So honestly, Duels is going to look very different. This is a totally insane number of changes. The best stuff all got gutted. I don't know what's going to happen in Duels, man. I'm very curious. I am a little sad we didn't see anything happen to Reno decks and Magical Torch. you know, those are things that don't necessarily do well in late game runs. I think they fall off to some extent, but man, early on it can feel pretty oppressive. So I'm a little curious about that, but otherwise a lot of exciting changes. Freeze stuff got killed, which has been frustrating me. As far as standard is concerned, some big changes here as well. So curious to hear what everybody thinks about all these vast, crazy card changes. It's a big old patch. Share your thoughts down there in the comments below. Gonna be playing this soon on stream, so hopefully you'll join me for some fun Duels action. That said, thanks much for watching today, and until next time, game on.